Hello everyone, I'm Elisha Krause, and this week on our Washington Examiner Newsmaker series, I am joined by Georgia's Republican Governor, Brian Kemp. We're going to discuss the new fair voting laws in his state, why he continues to stand up for the unborn, and COVID restrictions, along with much more. Governor, thank you for joining us on the Examiner series this week. I know that you're a very busy man these days. First, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you on behalf of the audience and send our condolences to the Atlanta area, specifically after the horrible shootings that took place there. Can you give us an update on where things are with that case and investigation?
Yeah, it's just terrible. Our thoughts and prayers continue to be out for the families and certainly the victims and just the community that was affected. Also, we've had just a really hard blow from an F4 tornado. There's only been 10 of those since 1950, and we took one of them here just a few days ago. So it's been a rough ride here in the state. As far as the investigation on the shooting, that's still ongoing. The FBI, I think, is predominantly involved in that with the locals. Our GBI is offered to assist, but they're really taking the lead in that, and that is ongoing.
And are there any laws currently on the books, in your mind, on the state or federal level that would have prevented the shooter from obtaining weapons?
Well, look, we're a state that supports the Second Amendment. I don't know all the details of the process that this individual went through, and I really wouldn't want to speak to that with an investigation ongoing, especially one that we're not involved in. I don't know the facts on that, so I'd probably leave that to the federal authorities or to the local sheriff's department.
Another thing that we've seen trending on social media is the hashtag #StopAsianHate. Would you like to defend your state and whether or not people there as a whole are anti-Asian or anti-minority in any way?
Yeah, a great record in the state of Georgia, being an international state, and Atlanta is certainly an international city with one of the best airports in the world, a lot of international travels. We have tons of international businesses. I've traveled internationally. I have a lot of friends and have done a lot of business with the Asian community that we have in our state, and I certainly think our record speaks for itself, and I wouldn't want one act to try to define who we are as a state, and I don't think this one does. I'll let the facts continue to come out before commenting further. But a good example is last year we had bipartisan support in the Georgia General Assembly, and I was proud to sign an anti-hate crimes legislation bill.
All right, so moving on to the thing that is causing a stir in your state and also in the nation, from celebrities to the White House and many others commenting what Democrats have now dubbed Jim Crow 2.0. Can you just give a brief explanation of this legislation that you signed into law?
Yeah, hard to imagine that the president and others are calling this Jim Crow. This legislation makes it easy to vote and hard to cheat in Georgia. Really, in a nutshell, it does away with an arbitrary signature match and requires a voter ID, which we've had that requirement for in-person voting, which, normally 95% of Georgians have done in previous elections. That ID is free in Georgia. It secures ballot drop boxes around the clock, requires poll workers to tabulate ballots continuously until every vote is counted, not, be starting and stopping that process. We get timely results and people can monitor that process. And then, believe it or not, I know it's hard to understand this because you have so many people saying the quote Jim Crow, but it expands access for our early voting period even further on the weekends. And you have people out there just saying how bad this is. It's unreal to me that the Democrats all voted against expanding weekend access during the early voting period, and they voted against a simple voter ID requirement that will do two things. I think it'll further secure absentee ballots by mail, which we saw a huge increase, 350%, I think it was, but also it'll speed that process up for tabulating those ballots at the county level and make those local election workers' lives a lot easier instead of having an arbitrary signature match process.
So there's been a lot of buzz in the last couple of days, specifically on social media, that you guys are not allowing voters to eat or drink. Could you clarify that for the audience, please?
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I want people to know that they can actually eat and drink when they're waiting in line. It's insane that that's all the Democrats got to complain about. It's also very troubling that the President of the United States has been focused on the ability, which he thinks people won't have, to be able to drink a bottle of water or eat a sandwich if they happen to be waiting in line when the dam is broken on the southern border and people are flooding across. That's the water issue he should be dealing with, in my opinion. But, voters can bring food, they can order food, they can step outside the 150 feet line and get food from a campaign or a candidate or a third party group. But when they're in that 150-foot buffer, we don't want voters to be bothered. We don't want them to be electioneered. And, that's what the bill does. So it's ridiculous to think that people can't, have a drink of water. And the county election workers can provide drink stations or bottled water to voters if they need it. The other thing is, you should be asking the question, why am I standing in that line so long to start with? That is because the county's not doing a good job of moving people through in an efficient manner. And this bill actually addresses that with the number of machines that are required per precinct, per capita, and nobody's talking about that part of it.
What do you say to the critics that are saying that you signed this bill into law and Republicans in your state did it to solely appease those Trump voters who are upset about the 2020 election results?
Well, I wouldn't disagree with that. I think there was no doubt there was a lot of problems with processes in Georgia and other things that people complained about, issues that voters had that they either talked to their legislators about, they made complaints to the Secretary of State's office about, or to their local elections office. And this bill certainly, I think, will make elections more secure in Georgia, but it's also making them more accessible. But in a lot of ways, too, it's dealing with a lot of the mechanics that we saw in the election last year because of the volume of absentee ballot by mail, because of new processes that had never been in place before in Georgia, because of a public health state of emergency like ballot drop boxes, the inability for people in certain counties to get close enough to the counting process to actually see what was going on infuriated a lot of voters. I'm not saying that was fraudulent or anything else, but voters should be able to be close enough to the process or the campaigns, Democrat or Republican, to watch the process and hold the county officials accountable to make sure that processes are being followed. That's part of the American election way.
So final question on this, and then I want to switch to you reopening your state during this international pandemic, even as the Biden administration is asking states to tamp things down. But you've been hit a lot by the left, specifically by corporations and Hollywood celebrities back in 2019 when you signed the heartbeat bill into law that the pro-choice movement called anti-woman and anti-abortion. Organizations like Disney and Netflix said that they were going to pull filming from your state. Now people are urging the Masters to move locations, Coca-Cola and Delta to switch up where their HQs are. How do you respond to people that are trying to destroy your economic success in your state due to this new voter ID law?
Well, they should be ashamed of themselves, to be trying to hurt our economic recovery with great Georgia companies because of, a false narrative they have out there. That's only hurting hardworking Georgians. And I hope that those individuals will react to this movement and just call it out for what it is. There's a lot of people that's making a lot of money driving this narrative. It was never about what was in the bill. It was about, what their talking point was going to be, regardless of what ended up in the legislation. We know that by the fact that the name of Jim Crow 2.0 was sucked up weeks ago. So this plan's been in place even before they knew what the final version of the bill was about. But listen, we're a state that values life. We've worked this session on ending human trafficking, adoption reform, and a lot of other things. And I think our Georgia businesses know that dang well. We've got a great economy in our state. And I don't think you're going to see them being canceled by these folks when they know what the truth is in this bill, that it makes for secure, accessible, and fair elections in Georgia.
So speaking of that economic recovery, rumor has it that you're going to be completely reopening your state soon. What does that kind of post-lockdown life look like for your state?
Well, keep in mind, we didn't totally lock down ever. We only sheltered in place a few industries early on in the pandemic. We were one of the last to do that, one of the first to come out of it under heavy criticism from a lot of people in the national media and a lot of so-called public health experts that were getting paid to sit in their basement. But Dr. Toomey and I have worked on all those decisions together to strike that balance of protecting lives and livelihoods. And I think looking back, our COVID numbers are no worse than other states that have been locked down for a very long time. But our economic viability in our state has protected a lot of livelihoods. And we're continuing to look at ways that we can fully reopen our economy. And most of that's fully reopened now. But we definitely have sectors that have been hurt worse than most. Obviously, the service, restaurant industry, convention center business, anything that's tied to business or certain parts of leisure travel, and then obviously the airline industry with the Atlanta airport. But we're seeing signs of life there. I was on the coast of Georgia just a couple of days ago, letting people know that we're open for business. We want people to come back and experience our great food and great beaches and great lodging on the coast. And a lot of the other entertainment venues, whether it's a state park or a, large entertainment venue like Wild Adventures or Six Flags or what have you. And that day's coming. We're working hard to continue to get the vaccine out, be smart about what we're doing, but also, moving forward on our economic viability in our state.
Well, I'm sure many of your constituents are excited to see college football come back in full swing in the fall as well. Governor, thank you so much for your time, and we hope to have you back in the future.
Thank you.